The organized woman movement dates from 1848, when a convention to consider the rights of women was held in Seneca Falls, New York. The committee drafting the list of woman's wrongs found her grievances against the government of men to be the same number that American men had had against King George. It took George Washington 6 years to rectify man's grievances by war, but it took 72 years to establish women's rights by law.
In the fall of 1920, millions of American women voted for the very first time. They were taking advantage of what Carrie Chapman Catt, among countless others, had worked so hard to help them gain. It was a momentous achievement, the culmination of a battle that took more than 7 decades. And for Catt, a cause she had spent 40-plus years of her life fighting, the fight to win women the vote.
It's a story of America, and it's a story of how we change our laws, and it's a story of how we make the Constitution a living document. This is a very important story. It's the enfranchisement of half of our nation, and it's a story of democracy.
Carrie Clinton Lane was born January 9, 1859, in Ripon, Wisconsin, the middle child with 2 brothers. In 1866, at the close of the Civil War, her family moved to a farm near Charles City, Iowa. Her parents, Lucius and Maria Lane, saw in their daughter a toughness and an independence unlike most girls of her time, and early on witnessed her pledge to fight for women's rights.
Carrie said that she became a suffragist at 13, and it was a result of the fact that her parents very much wanted Horace Greeley to be elected president. And so election day finally came, and Carrie, as a young 13-year-old girl, was very, very, very excited about that. She ran into the kitchen where her mother was working to tell her she had to go change her dress because her father was about ready to go into town to vote. And her father appeared at the door, and both her father and her mother laughed about this, that Carrie would think that her mother was going into town to vote too. And her father replied to her that voting was men's business.
Catt would later say, "It was fate, not a career, that took me in charge. I could never forget that rank injustice to my mother. I verily believe I was born a suffragist."
My grandfather, Warren, was Charles's son, who was Carrie's brother. And I was very proud of her. I would have liked very much to meet her. What made her be so determined to get people to vote, and why she was so upset when her father went to vote and her mother couldn't?
Catt's childhood outrage marked the beginning of her decades-long crusade for women's suffrage. She would become one of the towering figures who would lead the fight for women's right to vote, against the nation's deep-rooted forces of sexism, prejudice, and political interests.
I have come to appreciate what a strategic political actor Carrie Chapman Catt was. She really understood the terrain and the realities that she faced, in the 19-teens and the 1920s.
Carrie Chapman Catt, I think, more than any woman suffragist, actually, brought that suffrage amendment home. She financed it, she organized it, she was singularly focused on it. I think that we, women in this country, need to thank her for the right to vote.
The 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution granted American women the right to vote, a right known as women's suffrage. The amendment was signed into law on August 26, 1920. It declared, "The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation."